we take on masks, we put on personas. Costumes are informed by culture and family and the schools we went to and religion and statehood identity, and they are all not authentically a part of you.
Jennifer Day is the founder of LifeShine Design, an intuitive coach, artist, and author who turns survival into sacred transformation. Through human design, gene keys, and art medicine, she helps others remember who they truly are. How quickly did you start seeing results when you came to this point? You knew things had to change.
I walked around with tears pouring out of my face. I did not see a way to move forward in the life that I was living. I felt exhausted to a cellular level. And I realized at the time when everything fell apart that there was no answer outside of me. The answer only lay within me. I only had two options. And one was to move forward, and the other one was to no longer be here. The most beautiful transformations in our lives happen from are birthed or born from or grow from the darkest times.
Hello and welcome to Radical TV. I'm Shawna Smith. Joining me here today is Jen Day. Hello, Jen. How are you?
Hi, I'm wonderful. How are you?
Good. Jen is the founder of LifeShine Design, an intuitive life coach, an artist, an author whose work bridges mysticism and grounded transformation. Through Jen's offerings spanning human design, gene keys, Enneagram, art medicine, and ritual, she helps people unlock their authentic brilliance and embody their creative frequency. A two-time international best-selling author and the visionary behind the Sacred Wild Oracle and the Kaleidosol Framework, Jen gives others a chance to rewild their inner world, reclaim their voice, and step into leadership rooted in joy, sovereignty, and soul. Wow, Jen, this sounds amazing.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's good to see you. Let's start with the elephant in the room, Jen. What's the biggest lie that your target audience has been told about their industry or that you've discovered is actually completely false?
As we grow up, we take on masks, we put on personas, we change ourselves and shift ourselves like chameleons to function within the whatever society we're experiencing. And those masks and those costumes are informed by culture and family and the schools we went to and religion and statehood identity and all of these things. And they are all not authentically a part of you.
Yes, I hear exactly what you're saying on that. How long did you believe this lie yourself, Jen?
I lived within those constraints for the first 47 years of my life. And then I could no longer hold the structure of the family together anymore. I was breaking underneath it and it was impossible. It needed to crumble. And everything that I teach about is now based in what I learned in my walk forward from that burning fire.
Mm-hmm. What's the real cost when people actually believe these lies?
Soul exhaustion.
Paint me a picture. What does a typical day look like for someone trapped in this lie?
The false idea that life is only about getting up, having breakfast, going to work, going to the grocery store, coming home, making dinner, doing all the chores, and then going to sleep. That this cycle is what locks us in and is what the American dream is all about. That is a personal hell. I think that we have lost the structure of being able to think about our lives in a deep manner in order to think harder about why we're here. What are we doing? How are things moving? What's the purpose? And I think that the grind, if you will, is it is monotonous and it's seductive and almost hypnotic. And when we feel exhausted by that, that is when we need to actually put some effort towards doing something different. And a lot of people feel so exhausted by that whole idea that they don't know how to move forward until the only thing left for them to do is to move forward.
Now, you do a lot of amazing things. Have you always been doing these practices, or how did you get started? Like, take me back to your lowest point. What was happening in your life when you realized that what you were doing wasn't working?
I was married for 18 years, and I lost my father when I was 24. And my husband was the continuation of that sort of soul contract to work through narcissistic tendencies and uncontrolled rage, emotional dysregulation, and verbal and emotional violence. My husband then took it up into some physical violence. The time when I lost all control of it was when my youngest hit 15. And going through those teenage years just triggered my ex-husband excessively. Of course, the system within our family was that my oldest son was the scapegoat and my younger son was the golden child. And that I actually just have within the past 3 years realized that that is the same system in which I grew up, and I was the scapegoat. And when my oldest hit the teenage years and some of the challenges just grew, the consequences of behavior grew, the consequences for his behavior within our family structure were already so out of balance with whatever problem or issue was created that there was just nowhere to go. And I was not happily married, obviously. And I had tried to leave my husband a few times, but the court system told me that I didn't have enough evidence to get full custody. They would have given my ex-husband 50-50 custody. And yet also at the same time, if Child Protective Services knew what was happening within my household, I stood the risk of losing my children. And so we both did, but I would have also lost it. So I walked a really razor thin line for those many years. And an event happened in our family where my younger son, who was 12 at the time, he ran to a neighbor's house and called 911. And when the police came, the responsibility was on me to press charges on my ex-husband. And I was too afraid. I was like, who's going to come tomorrow and protect me when he comes home? Like, I don't have a plan. I don't have a safety net. I don't know what I would do. So I did not press charges. But that was when I knew that my youngest could get himself to safety. So I knew that I had to start planning my exit. And that was in early 2017. So the ground was just burning. I also realized that there was very little obvious support for a woman in my position. I ended up losing my job. I was a teacher. And when it became obvious to me that my ex-husband was watching and kind of paying attention to where I was, when I told the front secretary, the school secretary, like, hey, I seem to notice when he knows when I'm here and when I'm not. Will you tell me if he's in the parking lot before I leave at night so I don't have to run into him? And that tricked off a series of events where the school district told me that as of that minute, and it was only 3 weeks before the year was over, but I was no longer working there because I couldn't bring the possibility of domestic violence onto the school campus. I mean, of course, I wouldn't want to bring that onto campus. And also that just left me free falling. I lost my routine. I lost my job. I lost my community. I am still heartbroken over abandoning my students that way. I mean, I had nothing that was holding me aloft at that point. I'm so grateful that 3 years before I had been given the opportunity to travel to Peru as a translator for a group of Americans who were going through an initiation with the Caro Nation in the Sacred Valley. So we traveled between Cusco and Machu Picchu for 10 days. I was the translator and by proxy was initiated. And I taught Spanish for 30 years. So this was right up my wheelhouse and loved it, every minute of it. And I had an experience where I was baptized in a glacial lake. And I have a complicated history with religion. My father was Church of England and my mom agnostic. And so I had gone to church with a number of different friends to sort of figure out what this was and where they went on Sundays. I attended a Christian Science private school for 3 years. That was an overwhelmingly harmful experience. The whole idea of being baptized was shocking to me. I wasn't sure how I was going to handle that. And yet it was the most beautiful experience I've ever had and initiated me into my connection with Mother Earth, which has it, she fortifies me every day. It allows me to move forward with a confidence in my own wisdom and in my own knowing. And that was the most, when I left my ex husband 3 years later, I was able to move forward with confidence, albeit fragile, about my own abilities, my own judgment, my own wisdom. Could I trust people? How did I get here? What was I doing in my life that allowed where I allowed all of this stuff to happen? And so that was sort of the only thing I had at that time that I left my ex-husband was that connection to that spiritual belief system of having all of us have a birthright connection to Mother Earth.
Hmm.
And then there's Father, Son, and the moon, and these things that were constant. They're constantly here in our lifetimes, and they have a wisdom that the ancient cultures across the world respected and observed, and that those teachings were present in their everyday life. And that fortified me when I had nothing else.
Thank God you had that.
Yes.
What did that moment, when you're at your lowest point, what did that moment feel like in your body?
My whole body shudders to even check back in with how that felt, because I felt exhausted to a cellular level and frenetically anxious, and I had difficulty focusing. Um, I had gone into my doctor's office at one point, and she saw a number of us in the family. And so I finally went into her because I walked around with tears pouring out of my face 24/7. I would drive to school to go teach, and I'd be just weeping, which the word weeping now has a different connotation for me than it did before this life chaos. And I would walk into my classroom and put on a smile and teach and connect with the kids and just be so, that's always been my greatest source of connection and energy. And then I would leave from my classroom at the end of the day, and instantly the tears would start again. When I walked into my doctor's office and said, I'm falling apart, I can't do this, she was so grateful that I finally was sticking up for myself and putting myself on the table. And it was the first time I realized that it was obvious to those around me that I was so frantically holding on to the fragments of each of us in this family unit, and that I needed help. So the level of disconnection that I felt from my life's purpose, from my why, from my idea of motherhood, and what motherhood all encompasses, being a wife, having a relationship with someone who is supposed to love and protect me and honor me. And we were supposed to understand and lift each other up and support each other to become the best people that we could be. The fact that I looked around and finally had to accept that none of that was happening. I felt like I was one little pinprick and that there were vast oceans between me and everybody else. It was a really dark night of the soul for sure.
What were you telling yourself at that time?
I was in Denver where I had raised my kids. I had moved down from Breckenridge at the time of the divorce, where we were living when everything fell apart. And I was telling myself that I did not see a way to move forward in the life that I was living, that I did not see how to rebuild. I didn't see how I could step forward and continue and grow a life after all of that. I was desperately looking for an anchor And um, I was struggling because all of the responsibilities that I had grown up thinking were mine were no longer even accessible to me, meaning that if I just worked harder, I could create a safe environment. If I just focused harder or studied harder or did more in the house, or, you know, I had another sort of habit, if you will, that when things were really going south in our family, I didn't know how to fix them myself. So I was seeking more and more outside help. What do I do? How do I do this? How do I do this? And I realized at the time when everything fell apart that there was no answer outside of me. The answer only lay within me. And so I had to start doing some deep work that I had never had the courage to do.
What finally made you say enough is enough?
When I realized that I only had two options, and one was to move forward and find a way to do this, and the other one was to no longer be here. And that was I am a really sort of perpetually sunny, optimistic, happy person, which is a superpower that many of us have that allows us and helps us to, carry on when things are falling apart or things are not panning out the way we thought they would. And it was shocking to me to be in a point where I did not have access to that part of me anymore. It could make me cry right now, actually, because it was just devastating. And I had a therapist before I left my ex husband. And she asked me a really interesting question about a year and a half before everything fell apart. She said, Jen, if you had a year, a full, 12, 13, 14 months, whatever, where you could do anything that you wanted to do, what would that be? And I said, well, I would want to go travel and I would want to go live abroad, but I would want to bring my kids, or I would want to go study in San Miguel de Allende, which has always been a dream of mine, but I would want to bring my kids. And she kept saying, no, 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 you can't bring your kids. What would you do if you had a year? How would you handle it? How would you spend that time to honor you? And I literally could not answer that question. And she would ask me periodically, have you come up with your plan? And I kept saying no. Like I cannot imagine not being a mom. How do you just decide when your kids are teenagers that you're not going to be with them for a year? And after everything fell apart and my children chose to go live with their father in New York for a year, I was by myself in Denver where I had raised my children. And I was like, oh my God, she knew. She knew this was going to happen. And so I need to figure out what this is going to look like. What is it that I want when I have no responsibility to think about anybody else? And that began my unraveling, but also the unraveling of all the stories and the bars of the prison that I had kind of constructed around myself, locking myself into this life with the domestic violence and unhealed emotional wounds flying around everywhere. And it was terrifying to pull down those walls and those bars, but it was liberating. Like, what do I want to do today? I just want to be with my dogs today. Okay, then just be with your dogs today. I had to take it minute by minute. And then it was day by day. And then it was, what am I going to do next weekend? And I could actually look forward. The most beautiful thing that became my practice was feeling my feet on the ground. Just feeling my feet on the ground and activating. We all have energy centers on the bottoms of our feet. We, in this culture, are pretty much aware of 7 chakras. We actually have energy centers, hundreds of them. And even as I speak about the energy centers on my feet, I can feel them starting to light up, which for me, that means they get warm. And just activating my feet so that I could stay present and in my body, that was the ask. And nothing else mattered as long as I was in my feet, in my body, and moving forward.
How quickly did you start seeing results when you came to this point? You knew things had to change. you started to pivot, and how fast did you start seeing things change for you for the better?
There was an evening that I think sort of shifted my timeline and moved me forward really fast. And it sounds witchy, but I want to offer that words are spells. And so in my practice, we are very careful with the words that we use, the way we explain things, the way we discuss physical ailments. I don't know if you're aware of this, but we are the only language that says things like, oh, my back is killing me. Like nobody, no other languages have a structure. I think it's more and more these days, but other languages do not have an built-in structure where we use languages about physical personal harm around our body and the sensations that we are feeling. And this particular night, if words are spells, then I said a spell, and I had a fire going in my fireplace, and I wrote all of the things I was no longer willing to accept in my life. And then I screamed them into the fireplace and burned that list. And then I wrote another list, which was all of the things that I was calling in for myself. And then I screamed that into the fire. And then within like under 2 weeks, I think it was 11 days, I met my current husband, which I was not expecting. The day before I met him, I was like, I am never getting married again, and I will never be physically dependent on or financially dependent on another human, and on and on. And those were anger and pain point speaking. Those were not actually what I wanted. But self-protection often looks like declarations of strength. That's when things changed, when I literally could say out loud and define, these are the 25 things that I have lived with my whole life that I will no longer accept, period. And these are the things that I'm calling in. And the other thing that was on that list of things that I was calling in was that the action steps I had to take to get there. What did I have to heal? What did I have to face? How did I need to move forward? Personal responsibility that I had to go for a walk every single day because that was good for my body, even if I want to crawl under the bed and not move. So that was the turning point.
Wow. You've developed what you call Kaleidosol. Is that correct?
Yes.
Walk us through the system. If someone was to start it, how would that work?
Kaleidosol is a 12-week program, which does not mean to say that it is 3 months long, because there's a lot packed into each of these three sections. There's each of the sections are 4 weeks long. They're broken into the surrender, the portal, and the ascension. We use human design, gene keys, some astrology, the Enneagram, because within these systems, I have found that there is the human design gives us the idea of what is the astrology at our time, the time of our birth, that imprints into us certain archetypal energies. And we work a lot with archetypal energies in my program. And getting familiar with what activates this avatar, this physical body as we move through space, is really valuable information. The human design system offers us ideas about the biosphere, or this lifetime that we're living, and the pathways to learning what we came here to learn. So human design is the body, gene keys is the lifetime, and then the Enneagram offers us the wisdom into who we became to stay safe within our childhood. And each of us have a primary major wound, at least one, between 0 and 7, and each of us has one between 8 and 14. And those inform the way we interact and react and explore intimacy with other people throughout our lifetimes. So the wisdom between these three systems is beautiful. And a lot of people have heard about human design, and they've heard about gene keys. And my clients have come back to me over and over, like, I know we talked about this, but what is this again? And the purpose of Kaleidosol is to get people anchored into the information in a way through art medicine that allows that information to become theirs. I can tell you who you are, Shawna, till you're blue in the face. But unless it's information that you actually integrate and can access, it is not helpful information.
Mhm. That makes complete sense. So, step one is what?
Step one is the surrender. And that is the beginning of the program. I would have a one on one with my clients where we dive into some of the results of the tests that, like the Enneagram is a test that you have to take outside of my platform. And I give them a quick basis reading of the human design and gene keys, of some of the cycles and the lessons that I see therein. That 4 weeks is a pretty intense 4 weeks because there's a whole lot of personal responsibility that has to be taken during this time. I believe that there's a pithy saying that is that everything happens for us, not to us. And I call it pithy because I think that's dismissive of some of the pretty major injuries that humans do to humans. So, in no way am I dismissing the harm that a lot of these experiences have caused. But the reality is that we have to step forward. And so, how are we going to integrate those parts? And how are we going to take personal responsibility that even though someone harmed me, I get to be the protector of me and I get to move forward honoring and knowing deeply and intimately what I need to be safe.
Hmm. Getting us out of victimhood, right?
Yes, victimhood is entirely giving our power to somebody else. So the purpose of the 4 week of surrender, there's a lot of deep individual work that goes in between our sessions, and really identifying the ways we show up as victim is it's a pillar of this surrender portal, this surrender piece, and it takes time because we need to get intimately connected to and aware of and acquainted with all of the voices that are in our heads. Even as you're driving to the grocery store, if a car cuts you off, what do you hear? Like where's the victimhood that pops up there? What's the narrative that your inner voices are feeding you? And how do you individually act? And then once we have identified them and become acquainted, then we're ready to move a little bit more into the portal, which is the second
Okay.
section.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about the portal. Is that kind of step two? Do you consider that step two, or is that
Yes,
beyond step two?
the portal is the second section. And this is when there's a whole bunch of individual information has been gathered by my clients. And they have also received a lot of information through these different systems. And the portal is the structure through which we identify and really get deeply connected to that all that we've learned through those 4 years, throughout those the first 4 weeks, and with all those that's information. The portal is the time that it's literally like we're digesting the information. There's art medicine sounds interesting, so I want to dive into that for a minute because it really comes prevalent in this section. Creativity is something that every single one of us, I mean, I don't like to shit on people, but I know we all need to be creative in some way every day. That doesn't necessarily mean you need to pick up a piece of paper and a pen. It does mean you need to be intentionally creating in your life, in the kitchen, on a walk, with your dogs, playing with your kids, reading a book. But the book topic has to be selected on purpose. I think when we were speaking earlier about sort of this the grind, and when people are in that stage of their development, of their life force, if you will, they're not necessarily listening to spiritual podcasts or considering anything terribly deep. Um, the human design the gene keys in particular, steps in here really strongly. We are in gate 64 right now. And that in my Sacred Wild Oracle deck, I gave animal totems to each of these gates. There are 64 gates in human design, and Gene Keys is an extrapolation of human design. It grew from human design. So there are also 64 gates there. There's a basis in these systems of the I Ching, numerology, the Kabbalah, all kinds of really old ancient belief structures um, that inform this system. So if we right now are in gate 64, we're going to move out of it tomorrow, I think. The animal totem for 64 is the rabbit. And the rabbit, this is the shamanic interpretation, the rabbit teaches us that when something happens, they sort of freeze and take stock, and then they wait for something else to happen. They wait for other information to come before they decide what they're going to do. Run away, run left, run right, dip back underneath the bush behind them. And that pause, this is the representation of the pause, which allows us to step into responding rather than reacting. And so to get back to your first, to your question, in this portal, in the portal section, we take this time to really study what the rabbit's talking about. What does that mean? How can I integrate that into my life? How am I reacting versus responding? Where are my reactions actually harming myself? And where do my reactions come from? They come from victimhood often. They come from recognizing patterns of behavior that we have learned over time that we are projecting onto whatever this experience is that we're having at the moment. So this portal time is really valuable. The art medicine piece comes in when we take the time to get creative and paint symbols and colors and play on a canvas where we're putting onto paper or a canvas or whatever the energies of that which we are studying, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
It's not product driven. It's not like you're going to paint something that you're going to put on your dining room wall. You may want to, it may
Mm-hmm.
become that, but it's the process that is what's important. And between the gene keys, the human design, and this art medicine project process, it allows me to get really intentional about the energy that I am spending on creativity. So it this is what I teach within this portal section of my program. I think it's super valuable, and it's not something that we do when we're stuck in the grind.
No. This sounds so unique and so real and so soulful. What makes your approach different from anyone else out there?
I know people say this, but it's a pillar of my program. Your results from this program will be based on your participation and your owning of responsibility. You can go to 35,000 different people to get a human design reading right now. Gene keys, these are things that I started talking about a decade ago. Nobody knew what I was talking about, and they're all over the place now. And the intention with all of us who are able to read these complex systems, because they are complex and there's a lot of information, the intention is always that the client leaves with action steps and with ways that they can recognize themselves and move forward with more ownership and responsibility and pleasure. This life is supposed to be pleasurable. And I think that, I know for me, I lost that completely before. And all of my clients are seeking an element of that as well.
Hmm.
In my program, I am not going to tell you what your problem is and then offer you a solution for it. You get to dive deep into these systems so that you get intimately involved within these and the knowledge of you so that you can move forward and you know what to do when you hit another pitfall. You have practices and ways, and this doesn't have to take 6 hours a day. That's not even reasonable, let alone what any sane coach would ask for. But you will have tips and tricks and tools that you can use in the car, on a Post-it note, sitting at your desk, or as you journal with your morning coffee, that can help you stay connected and look inside for the answers that you seek.
What do people usually get wrong when they try to do this on their own?
This kind of goes back to whether or not you can understand the information in your chart. Very often with astrology, and certainly with human design and gene keys, people are looking for an answer. They want like a drive-through They want a drive through answer station. They want to be able to say, this is my problem at the order here. And then they want you to hand them a solution at the end. There's a word that Richard Rudd uses with the Gene Keys that is contemplation. Life lessons are complex. They have ancestral and generational information in them. And the indigenous believe that when we solve something for ourselves, we are solving it for the 7 years before and the 7 years after we perform that sacred work. That implies contemplation. And I think that many of us in our hurry, hurry, fast, fast, rush, rush world want answers in that same fashion. And that's just not possible. For me, I moved quantum fast through a lot of this healing in my life. And I'm so fantastically grateful for the opportunity for the past 10 years to really focus on these systems and what they mean to me. And I have a lot of clients who are like, please hurry up and teach this. Please hurry up and teach this. And I have been seeking for the way to teach this in a way that is meaningful, long lasting, and cellular deep. Remember at the top of the episode, I was saying that I had been cellularly exhausted. I am no longer. I am fed and nourished, and I protect that status really fanatically. And it just comes down to personal hygiene, to the way I live my life. And this is wisdom that it's taken me a really long time to learn for me, what works and what doesn't. And sometimes I'm like, oh, I'm overtired right now because I dropped a boundary somewhere. And I know how to go back and reinforce that boundary. And I can easily follow the little trail to what happened so that I can not do that. And I believe that when we respect our own boundaries and our own sovereignty, our own ownership of our lives, we are doing a service to everybody else. And one of my clients came to me just last week. We were talking about this. She said, I don't know how to move forward and to continue to work on myself when my kids are doing this and this is popping up in my family of origin and this, my mom is saying this and my husband's like, who are you? And, what have you. This work does it ripples out and people will notice. I think it's been another thing. I believe Brene Brown has said it among many, many others, that you can only do your own work. That is true. But when you do your work, you open the door for the healing for everybody within your system. And that has been profoundly liberating for me.
What are the common obstacles that people face at each step of your program?
Resistance. Resistance is everywhere. If you think about a river, for instance, there are big boulders that are throughout the river system, wherever this river is flowing, and the water needs to find a way around it. Resistance can come up in even your subconscious, making you forget to come to a meeting, for instance. There are things that we are scared of facing. And I personally believe that we are here in spirit having an experience in a physical body. And the physical body can often, I spent my whole first 45 years living like this, where I did not want to feel the feelings that were in this physical body because they were too overwhelming and terrifying. And learning how to filter, to use this body as a filter for processing emotions and experiences is amazing and can help us get around that resistance. Because anytime you have a resistance or you have a quote trigger, unquote, that word is often triggers people, chuckle, chuckle. There's information for us to gather. There's information there. So just like the rabbit, if we were to notice resistance or a trigger or just having a feeling like I really don't want to do this today, that's a moment to pause and to wait for more information, just like the rabbit. And once we have more information, when we're feeling the energy in our feet and we feel that whatever the next information is coming up, then we can move forward with intention. If we are not moving forward with intention, we are only reacting and we lose control and our own sovereignty when we react.
How can someone know when they're starting to make progress?
Resistance and triggers will happen more and more frequently. There will be a time when, think about when you put on new shoes, right? You find sections of your feet that are being rubbed in a way that they have never been rubbed before, or you have sensitive spots because your toes are being put in a different position or your heel is being rubbed. These things happen also energetically and spiritually when we begin to move into areas of, if you think about your spirit or your psyche as being a room, right? If you open a door in that room that has not been opened in a long time, the air is going to smell kind of stale. There's going to be spider webs, perhaps. There's some work to do to clean out that space. And that work at the outset is not always 100% pleasant. There is, however, always a sense of accomplishment when you get the light on and you've swept it out and you've aired it out and you can see what it is that you're dealing with. I believe the most beautiful transformations in our lives happen from, are birthed or born from or grow from the darkest times. And so those rooms are super, they hold treasures. They hold beautiful opportunity for us to learn from. And they are parts of us that are in those rooms that have been abandoned and just forgotten. And it can be terrifying. It can be scary, which is why I offer this Kaleidosol container. It is an intimate group. It will be super limited in terms of seats because this is just not work to do in a huge group. There needs to be trust. And doing it in community is, in my opinion and in my experience, the most profound support system. The opposite of addiction is not sobriety, it is connection. And whether or not we're talking about the addiction to social media or the addiction to television or the addicted to dissociating or the addiction to food, exercise, substances, anything, it is connection, the opposite of that, the antidote to that addiction and the sense of loneliness that all of us are feeling.
If someone's listening right now and they want to start implementing your method, what's the very first thing they should do today?
Go to my website and I have a number of free offerings on there. I also have a Substack where I write about a lot of these sort of astrological, the gates in the human design system, and the shamanic interpretation for action steps. Again, I'm very action forward. I don't want this just to be information that kind of blows by you and only messes up your hairstyle rather than gives you a shift in perspective or something to think about. That's the Illuminated Path on Substack. I am opening the doors for Kaleidosol. The first webinar is on October 15th. So I would love to see as many people there as possible to see if this is the right fit. And there will be an application process that I will provide in some of the steps to get into that program if you're interested after hearing more about the program in the webinar.
Wow, group work is really profound, isn't it? I mean, it's a nice way to do things. Who do you feel specifically called to serve, Jen?
A number of people have suggested that I work, because of my past, that I work specifically with people who have had my experiences. And as much as I am like, I don't like, that's a lot. I mean, that I'm not sure I want to work specifically with narcissistic relationship survivors or whatnot. But what I have realized more recently is that the greater thread between throughout my life has been dysregulated nervous systems and unhealed emotional regulation. And every single one of us has experienced some sort of violence from somebody who was emotionally dysregulated or who had a nervous system dysregulation issue. And so I don't believe that there's anyone who would not benefit from greater regulation. But I specifically am inviting in this round women who are struggling to really find their feet as their families mature and get older and the consequences for life's struggles get bigger. And we are forced in our midlife to do a review. And it is that those people who are in a moment of review that I think this information will be particularly potent for. because it is time for us to step forward and be able to respond from a grounded, regulated, emotionally mature, personal responsibility standpoint.
Is there anything that breaks your heart about what you see happening in your industry currently?
I really struggle with a lot of the coaching and therapy and all of the way that we have, quote, healed, unquote, other people for decades. The only way we have understood to heal people was to use talk therapy and to say all of the traumatic experiences out loud. I don't believe that's the only way to go. I'm not saying it's not helpful, because I do think you have to have really honest and bare, naked conversations about your experiences to fully understand them. And there's an opportunity for us to do deep, deep work without re traumatizing ourselves. And a lot of times, talking puts that cloak back on. I am a survivor of this. I am a survivor of this. I am a survivor of this, which just adds to our cloaks and our masks, if that makes sense.
Makes complete sense to me. When someone goes through your complete method, what transformation can they expect?
A more grounded, on purpose, and fulfilling daily existence.
And I know you mentioned it's a 12-week program. How long does the process typically take? I would imagine more unfolds even afterwards.
Yes, and when we're finished, we won't necessarily be finished. There will always be an invitation to stay within some sort of a container. I am envisioning this program taking 6 months, even though it's only 3 months necessarily in teaching, because I believe there needs to be 2 weeks between each of the sessions to really be able to lock and load your own personal experience within these structures.
Okay. And who is your ideal client to work with personally?
I am really excited by people who are ready to take the next step. It does not worry me if they're ready to take the next step today, but tomorrow they might get doubts. But people who are at that point where they see that the situations that they've created for themselves and the way they are living their life is actually limiting not only themselves, but others around them. That we have, if they can see the connection between each of us, that's important, because we are all connected. We are 99.9999999% energy and 0.0000001% particle. So I was just talking to a client last week who steps in and out of my environment kind of on the regular, and we've been working together for a couple of years now, but this is all very, very foreign to them. And I was trying to explain to them that if we are so much energy and frequency and so little particle, then think about what happens when we go out in our daily lives. We go out and we drive on a freeway in a box, and we feel like we're by ourselves. But if we think about, and I have some dowsing sticks that show, energy that we can throw it and pull it back and what have you, our energy goes well beyond our physical space unless we are being aware of our body, which is part of what I teach. But if we think that we are walking through our lives on the freeway, in the grocery store, at work, in line at the pharmacy, at the restaurant, what have you, we're absorbing parts of all of those people, and they are absorbing of us. And if this is true, then we need to have a practice that brings our energy back to us and releases their energy back to them. And this is a part that we've lost over time, because every ancient culture that I've studied, I study the Caro Nation still in Peru, and I also study with Rhonda McCrimmon in Scotland, and I have a Native American mentor up in Taos, New Mexico, where I spend almost half my time. All of them have a consistent story about us being able to protect, own, and cleanse our own energy. If you are ready, if that resonates and that feels like something like, oh my God, I didn't realize why I get anxious when I come home from the grocery store or drive through traffic or whatever. Those are the people that I'm ready to work with, who realize that the things that they've done and that they've known and that they've been taught so far in life are not working. They are not sufficient.
And what can they expect when they work directly with you?
One-on-one clients, I would do the reading, and I give a summary statement at the end of I send with a video that is action steps specific to that reading. I have very little time for that these days. My schedule's fairly full with that. Working with me one-on-one in Kaleidosol is that I will intentionally see you. It is my goal. This is why there are so many limited spaces within the system. My goal is to deeply personally know and honor each of the participants in my program. I don't believe that a program of 30 people that's only 6 months long, where we meet every other week, that's going to be possible for all 30 people. Many of my clients that I've worked with for years, we are sisters. It is a community. We have a connection that is really deep. And my goal is to create that kind of a container where we can go into the deep, dark spaces and feel seen, held, known, and understood. And I have a news flash. It is nobody's job to know you better than you know yourself. You have to know yourself better than anybody else, better than your partner, your mom, your kids, anybody. And every one of my clients comes to me wishing for other people to understand them better or to know them better. They want to be heard more effectively in their relationships. The first person that has to do that is you. Nobody else can do that for you. And that is something that I think we are unwinding as a culture. I know I am still constantly rewinding it, because we are taught from the moment we arrive here on this planet to look to others for guidance and those guideposts. Am I doing it right? Am I doing it okay? Is this okay? Is that okay? Oh no, I must have done something wrong. That's bad. So we have not been taught to look inside for those guideposts. And they're there. We have incredible wisdom and knowing within ourselves. And that is ultimately, when people leave my program, we are deeply connected. They feel that they have had a container where it's safe for them to know, see, understand, and hear themselves really deeply. And I'm so excited about it. I can hardly even keep my thoughts straight. So that's my answer.
I'm excited for you. So keep your thoughts straight so you can tell us how we can get in touch with you and hook up.
Thank you.
How can we connect with you, Jen?
My website, and I have a link tree which has my offerings. The Illuminated Path is where I show up, and I have 2 levels. I have a free level which gives the monthly forecast, so you can literally print it out, keep it up for the month. On the weekly basis, I do some deeper dives into the energy of what's happening, the gates. Oftentimes I post parts of any and all of that onto my social medias. I'm on Facebook at LifeShine Design, Instagram, LifeShine Design Coach, TikTok, LifeShine Design.
Very good. And then a couple last questions, because we're in a program together. What changed in your business or your life while working with the Radical Company that you did not expect?
I came to Radical Magic knowing I was a devoted, multi-passionate creative. And I could not find my way to communicate at all about all of these different systems. And I knew how they would help people, but I didn't have the language. I didn't have the tech training. I didn't have the guidance within my own system to focus on this. And I'll tell you what, I still struggle with it every single day, because being visible is scary. And I think it's scary for many, many people for a myriad reasons. So I still struggle with that, to go online on a regular basis and be transparent and talk about these things. But every week I get better because of the nuggets and the guidance that I get through this program. I would not have launched the Kaleidosol program without their support and teaching. So I love that I now have the skills to do it, that it's not something that I need to only get from this container because they are the holders, the gatekeepers, right? The keepers of the keys. I have them now.
Mm-hmm. And if you were talking to someone who's considering the radical company, what would you tell them about your experience?
A quote that I have always heard, that I've always pondered, because it is within my nature to be fiercely independent, but also want to be part of a group, but then kind of feel scared about being part of a group because I don't really know. The quote is, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with many. And the reason that that still resonates, but in an entirely different way, when that harp string is plucked, it resonates so strongly with me now, because when I was on my own, I would have moments of brilliance and then moments of quiet, and moments of brilliance and moments of quiet. And I felt like I was being tossed and turned in this ocean of super big waves that were either pushing me to be loud or dropping me into the void of quiet. With Radical Magic, there is some consistency. They're holding me up. They are reaching out and supporting me when I am feeling like, oh my God, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Why am I doing this? Who am I to do this? And the community, again, community is the antidote to isolation. This community has supported me in so many ways that I wasn't even expecting. And the friendships that have developed out of it are so beautiful. And, it's not always cherries and whipped cream. I realized about 8 months into it that most of the people in my group had no idea what it was that I did. And that was a shocking realization. And just to speak about victimhood and taking personal responsibility, there was a part of me that was like, oh my God, how could I be a part of this group and not be seen for 8 months? But ultimately, I had to ask myself the question, what have I not said? How have I not explained myself to these people where I've been in a room with them for 8 months and they don't know who I am? And I've been told that I have guards up, and one can understand why with my past. But this community and this group has really helped challenge the way I protect myself. And the invitation has been there over and over for me to step out and step out louder and louder and prouder and prouder. And I would not do that by myself. I would absolutely not do that by myself. So it's been really such a privilege.
Wow. Well, I'm so honored to have the chance to talk to you today, Jen. I can tell you're the real deal. Like, you really understand what you're doing, how to help others. And I really appreciate this conversation today. Thank you so much for joining us here on Radical TV.
Thank you so much for having me. I hope you have a beautiful day.
Thanks.